Are you struggling to get something done that you know really needs to get done? So say that there's a scary email that you need to send that you've been putting off for a few days, or there's a task that you know you need to start, but you've just been procrastinating for a period of time and the deadline's creeping up. There's one thing that I've found to be really useful in tackling things like that. And it doesn't matter how big or small the task seems to be. But if there's a reason, if you are putting it off, there's a reason for that. And it doesn't really matter what that reason is. But if it's something that you know needs to get done, the one thing that I have found really useful is asking myself, well, what's the first step? So often with things like that feel quite scary or feel like we don't really know how to go about doing them, it's a big thing, or we create it innocently as a big thing in our minds. And so asking ourselves, what's the first step? So let's say that it's this big project or this big task and there's loads of things to do and there's lots of moving parts. Or let's say it is something really small, but to us, for some reason, it feels big. Every big task is a series of little tasks. So what's the first step? What would the first thing be that I would need to do if I were to go about this? And then take that first step. It might be draft the email. Just start typing. It might be make a mind map of all the different parts of this project. It might be go and speak to that person who would know more about this than I do and who I can ask for some advice or whatever. So take that first step and then consider to yourself, like, okay, how easy or difficult is that first step? If that step feels easy, if it feels like, oh yeah, no problem, I can do that, then go and do it. And then ask yourself, what's the next step? If that first step feels really challenging, then consider that as the new project. And take that, say it's go and speak to so-and-so, or go and speak to these 5 people about it. And that feels like a big challenging task. That's your new project. What's the first step? So what would the first step be of enabling me to go and speak to all these people? And the answer will be different for each person. It will depend on the pieces of the puzzle that are more scary or more difficult for you. So, okay, what's the first step? Okay, well, I'd need to email these 5 individuals and ask them when they can meet. Okay, so does that feel easy? If it does, go and do it. If it doesn't, do it again. What's the first step of that? And eventually, you will come to a first step that is so easy, you could do it now and you could do it immediately. And it wouldn't take long at all. There's no mental block around it. There's no time block about it. It's just like, oh, I could do that. This big project, I can't do that. That feels too much for me. But this first step, I can do. In my experience, making a start is actually so much more supportive than anything else. That's the thing that really makes a difference when it comes to these big tasks or big scary projects. And by the way, there is no project that is scary. There is nothing inherently scary about any task or project. It's the fear that we put into it based on our own thinking, based on our own resources, based on our own perceptions of ourselves and our capabilities. That's what creates fear. That's what creates the scary task. It's not inevitably scary for everyone. So take this. So look at the project. Look at what the first step is, and keep creating first steps. Keep looking. What's the first step of that one? What's the first step of that one? Until you get to a point where it's so obvious, so easy that you can do that immediately. And there's no barrier. There's no internal barrier for that. And then you do that step, and then you go again. What's the next step? What's the next thing I would have to do? Usually we know the answer to that question. It doesn't tend to be a how-to problem. Most of the time when we're blocking ourselves, when there's some procrastination happening, it's not because we don't know how to do something. So the how-to is there. When we ask ourselves, okay, what would the next step be? The answer tends to come quite easily. If it is a how-to issue, usually we can go somewhere to get help. We could go to Google, we could go to colleagues, we could find people or things that will help us to answer the how-to question. And that, again, that's the step. Google it, right? Spend 10 minutes researching how would I put together a project plan for a product launch, whatever it might be. Get to the first small step and then keep working your way through that, taking tiny steps along the way. There will probably come a point, and this has been the case in my experience, there will probably come a point where you don't need to do the process anymore because you're just in flow. You're just doing it. You're just working on it. It's just happening. Usually it's those first few steps that tend to feel trickier. And actually, once we've got our foot through the door, once we've started making things happen, the rest of it kind of just flows by itself. I hope that's useful, and good luck taking the first small step. All the best.